Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the series premiere of Above the Noise. I'm Angie, aka Mrs. Angie with a J, your moderator. Our host, Rawle I Am, is a published poet, founder of Inspired Poetry Corner. Home is the Heart Open Mic, and Above the Noise Talk Show. Rawle, you have the mic.
Okay, we're not doing this every show. You're gonna read my bio.
Since seeing how I'm doing the intro.
No, you do it your way, man. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Anyway, thank you so much for that, those kind words. And thank you for being here. As Anne says, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever part of the world you are. We're taping this live in Toronto, where I'm located, and Ange is I believe still in Tennessee, or you're in Alabama?
I'm in Tennessee at this point. I'm in
In
Clarksville.
Tennessee. So Um, today's show, Above the Noise, is a new talk show that we've launched. And tonight we're just going to talk about why and what this show's about, what we're hoping to achieve, and then, kind of set the lay of the land of what we're going to be talking about over the next little while. So, um, just to give you a little background on how this came about. Above the Noise is just something that has been buzzing in my head. As Ange mentioned, I am the founder of the Inspired Poetry Corner, which is an online Facebook group for poetry, not just poets, writers, anyone in the creative field, but it's mostly poets. And I guess it's my second group. When I lived in a place called Kelowna, British Columbia in Western Canada, I started another group called the Inspired Word Cafe, which is still going on today. Actually, this month is 15 years that the Inspired Word Cafe is going strong. So coming back to Toronto, I very quickly had discovered the Zoom world of poetry, and it's because of that I got involved with starting up the Inspired Poetry Corner, which is, I believe, 3 years old now. And it's just a group where poets get together and post their poetry, and hopefully people will read and leave comments and make suggestions. From that, birthed the Inspired Poetry Corner recital, which is a recital that happens monthly. The third Sunday of every month, we invite poets to come and support a feature poet. And so that's just a little background on the Inspired Poetry Corner. Above the Noise is a talk show. Of course, there'll be poetry involved. I don't think I'm going to be reciting any poetry tonight because everything I do involves poetry. But Above the Noise is a talk show. And the reason why it's a talk show, because one of the things that's been irking me over the last little while, recent times, it seems like we've lost our ability to have respectful conversations, respectful debates, and particularly about things that are extremely important to all of us. You know, we've been told, not just recently, but for years, we don't talk about religion, we don't talk about politics, we don't talk about finance and economics and all these things we're not supposed to talk about. And yet those things have a tremendous impact on our lives daily, right? Daily. We all get up every morning to earn a living, to make money. And yet most people have no understanding how finance works, how money works, how the economy works. We live in a society where, a lot of our values and laws stem from a kind of a Christian ideology. But you live in a society where you don't have to be a Christian. So whether you believe or you believe in a higher power or not, we all have a belief. We have religions and various religions, and yet we find it very difficult to talk about these things because they get very passionate and sometimes they get very loud. And I understand that. So for me, Above the Noise, and when I thought of this, it's like, I really would love to have meaningful conversations with people across all aisles. I myself personally, I am not liberal or conservative. I live in Toronto, Canada, so our major parties, liberal, conservative, The same as in the United States, you have the Republicans and you have the Democrats. And I really don't care personally. I, at this stage of my life, I look for people that have good policies, policies that are going to improve our lives, policies that are going to help encourage these institutions that have such an important role in all our lives to govern well. And that's what I look for, governance. So it's funny because my friend Henry noted that, oh, the show is premiering tonight on 9/11, September the 11th. I didn't even, when I was crafting all of this and when I picked a date, it didn't even dawn on me it was 9/11. So the show, and I'll get into it a little bit more, it's an online show. We're going to Zoom it. My intent is hopefully to have it live when we put it on. I'm still trying to figure that out with Zoom. But it's a show designed for us to discuss social issues of our times, the things that we see every day that we may be afraid to speak of, and particularly over the last few years where people are afraid to really speak their minds because they're afraid they're going to be canceled. I don't care about that because no one has that kind of power. You don't want to partake in whatever I'm doing, you don't have to. So I'm not worried about that, but I want us to be able to talk. And then I think it's a couple of months ago now, I've invited Anjie to help me to manage the Inspired Poetry Corner. So now she's involved in all the madness that I feel that needs to be put out into the world. So it's a very simple format of this show. Every 2 weeks we will gather. So the next gathering is going to be on the 25th. It's about 60 to 90 minutes, depending on the flow of the conversation. Starts at 8 o'clock. It's always going to be the second and fourth Wednesday of every month. It's a very simple format. We're going to, we'll have these little segments. First segment will be called In the News, where I'm just going to kind of spotlight the major headlines of news from the various news agencies, both here in Canada and in the US. We're going to have a guest that's going to come on and have a conversation. What I'm looking to do is really reach out to people and go, what would you like to speak about? What are the things you would like to speak about? Or if they have no clue, I'll pick one. It'll be kind of an intro conversation that will allow us to have a conversation, and then we'll see where it tentacles from there. And then throughout the course of the show, Anjie, as our moderator, is going to kind of monitor the people that are in attendance, or if we're watching live, if people have questions they want to ask, we're going to ask people for questions beforehand. What are the things you would like to see us, talk about? And then at the end, towards the end of the show, we'll kind of give you the Inspired Poetry Corner news, things to look forward to that are coming up, and then closing comments. Very simple. It's a talk show. That's all it is. So what are we going to talk about? Well, it's funny, because last night watching the debate and then realizing it was 9/11, that is the news of the day. I don't know how many of you remember 23 years ago, 9/11 happened. I still remember to this day where I was. I was still living in Toronto. I had an early morning meeting at one of the banks, and I'm heading back to my office. I walk into the office, I think, just before 9 o'clock, if I remember correctly. And as soon as I walked in, our office manager goes, "Have you heard?" I go, "Heard what?" And she goes, "Have you heard?" She goes, "That they think a plane or something flew into one of the towers in the trade towers." And I go, "What, really?" So I ran into my office, and I had a small TV in there, and I turned it on, and lo and behold, I think it was the South Tower. I can't remember which one the first plane ran into, flew into. And there it is, this hole, and it's smoking. I'm like, wow, I couldn't believe what I was watching, because I grew up in New York. I remember watching those towers go up, right, when I was a kid in New York. So I was like, wow, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then I think within a half an hour, then the second plane flew into the tower, and it was just this jaw-dropping, couldn't believe what I was witnessing. So I'm sure many of you, when you trace back in your memory banks, you remember exactly where you were and what you were doing around that time between 9 and 10 o'clock on September the 11th. So in the news, because I woke up this morning remembering, oh, it's 9/11. And of course, we're talking about 9/11. We're talking about the things and all of the fallout from it. I myself don't know anyone that was in those towers that passed or was affected by it on that day. But it's funny, one of my ex-colleagues the day before was in the North Tower for a meeting. And I remember when he came into the office, we talked about that. And he was talking about how that meeting almost got pushed to the 11th. So we were just like blown away. So 9/11 is always something that's on my mind because I just remember the fear that we felt, even in Toronto. I know this happened in New York, but remembering that fear of what was going on because it was still unknown what was really going on. And once that happened, my first thought was my son. My son Harris was just 2 years old at the time. And then my next thought was his mother, and I called her up, and it's like, where's my wife? She was making a movie on some set, so she was away, and she was trying to call me, but she couldn't get through, so she was glad that I called her. And she goes, where's our son? I said, I'm about to go get him because we shut down the office and sent everyone home, and I went and got him, and just to make sure, just wanted to make sure things were safe. It almost feels like it was just yesterday, and it was 23 years ago. So fast forward to today. And the other big thing in the news was obviously the debates, because last night we had the first presidential debate. And I was watching that, and I purposely watched it. And I found it very difficult watching it. Not because I care about either one of the candidates in the sense of, I found it difficult watching because I almost felt like I was watching a reality TV show. And I remember thinking, very early on into the debate, and then as I watched it, as I continued to watch it, what happened to decorum? What happened to the days when political politicians could talk, could respectfully still debate? It kind of took me back to when Obama and McCain were fighting to become the president of the United States. Very much different ideology from an ideology standpoint. But there was still a great level of respect between the two men in regards to how they conducted themselves and how they spoke about each other and how they spoke about what the other person did. Yeah, they called them on certain things, and they were at times they got very passionate about it. But there was a level of respect. And watching this debate, watching the last debate, watching the last series of debates, and I don't see that same decorum anymore. And that really bothered me. It's the same thing with our politics here in Canada. When I watch the parties talk, when the leaders of the two parties, the one in power and the opposition, when they talk, there's no respect whatsoever to the fact that you're talking to another human being, and also you're talking to a fellow member of your country. None of that, because it doesn't matter if you like Trump or if you like Harris. They're both still Americans, and we're all still, you're still Americans, or we're all still Canadians. It's like, so where did that common decency, respect go? It just seemed to disappear. And when I look back, it kind of reminds me that last time I really felt like we experienced that was when Obama and McCain were running for office. I'm trying to remember the same thing here in Canada. It's not as vicious as it is in the States, but it's gotten that way. So last night I felt like I was watching a reality TV show. I was watching the survivors of Washington, D.C., and I felt like I was watching the desperate politicians fighting for the swamp. There was just no respect whatsoever. It didn't feel like a debate. It felt like a reality show. It felt like two people just there to not position what they saw for the country, for the world. One of the reasons this election is so important is because of the ramifications to the world. People may not want to accept that, but America is Rome. America is still the power. So America sets the tone for many things. America has good and bad like all countries. I'm not foolish to think America is a perfect entity. There's no such thing. But I still believe in what America stands for. And I still believe if we don't have a strong America, this world is going to be in a lot of trouble. Why? We still have a lot of bad actors in this world. That's the reality of the world we live in. And if we are setting an example of blatant disrespect, what is the rest of the world going to think? So I thought, I'm going to do my part and create a show where we can gather and talk to understand our differences. Steel sharpens steel. I do not want to have conversations with people that solely think the way I do. I want to understand, why do you think the way you did? How did you come to that conclusion? How did you decide to choose or to vote for this person versus this person? What were the policies that you like? What was it that they did that you like? And I'm not hearing a lot of that. I'm just seeing a lot of finger pointing, a lot of casting of stones. And yet people are saying, well, don't throw stones back. But if you're going to cast stones at people, of course they're going to defend themselves. So I want us to get to a place where we can sit down and talk, because I'm old enough to remember that back in the day, it felt like we could still talk. I grew up, I'm 63. So I spent a portion of my time in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. I still remember being a kid in New York with all the political strife that was going on with civil rights and the ERA and all the unions. And it was a very tumultuous time, but yet we still felt more connected. I still remember growing up in Brooklyn with all the racial strife and still feeling a sense of community and togetherness, not just in the Black community, but with everyone that we interacted with. And that feels like it's completely dissipated. Last night I watched watching that debate, watching two people who have a different way of looking at the world. Completely different way of looking at the world. One is not right and one is not wrong. It's just two different perspectives on how we look at the world. One of the things that I like to do is, before I make a decision on anything, is to make sure I do my research, to do my due diligence, to make sure I understand whatever the issue is, so I can make a concise and a well-informed decision. And I feel that that seems to be lacking. I'm not trying to say anything to anyone in here, but from what I observe, it feels like we've lost that. We're not doing anything. We're just being told what to do and how to do it. One of the people that I really look up to, and I think everyone should know this person, is a gentleman by the name of Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell was an economist. I don't know if you ever become an ex-economist. Because Thomas is now about 63, 64, 93, 94 years old. Thomas Sowell is a gentleman that was born in North Carolina in the 1940s, grew up in Harlem, served in the military, did a bunch of different things, but went to school at Harvard. I believe he got his, he got his PhD at the University of Chicago in economics, and has been practicing he practiced for many years, was a columnist, done a multitude of different things. But one of the reasons I love Thomas Sowell is that he's well researched. He takes the time to look to see what the facts and data says, and not just what we say. There's a lot of myths going around in our society. So he uses his practice of economics and history, because he was also a history professor, to try to debunk things. And one of the things in one of his many books that he's written, his book called Conflict of Vision, he talks about the two different visions, which more is from a political standpoint, but it actually applies to all of life. And the two visions are, you have the unconstrained vision and the constrained vision. And I'm just going to read this. The unconstrained vision. Sowell argues that the unconstrained vision relies heavily on the belief that human nature is essentially good. Those with an unconstrained vision distrust decentralized processes and are impatient with large institutions and systemic processes that constrain human action. They believe there is an ideal solution for every problem, and that compromise is never acceptable. Collateral damage is merely the price of moving forward on the price to perfection. Soul often refers to them as the self-anointed. Ultimately, they believe that man is morally perfect. Because of this, they believe that there exists some people who are further along the path of moral development, have overcome self-interest, and are immune to the influence of power, and therefore can act as the surrogate decision maker for the rest of society. That's the unconstrained vision. The constrained vision, Soul argues that the constrained vision relies heavily on the belief that human nature is essentially unchanging and that man is naturally inherently self-interested regardless of their best intentions. Those with a constrained vision prefer the systematic processes of rule of law and experience of tradition. Compromise is an essential part of dealing in life because there are no ideal solutions, there are only trade-offs. Those with a constraint vision favor empirical evidence and time-tested structures and processes over intervention and personal experience. Ultimately, the constrained vision demands checks and balances and refuses to accept that all people can put aside their innate self-interest. Like I said, one isn't right, one isn't wrong, just two different visions. And the more I understand Thomas Sowell and the more I understand these visions, the more I see that. And that's what I saw last night in the debate. You have two conflicting visions. I would say Kamala sits more on the unconstrained vision. Donald Trump sits on the constraint vision. And they butt heads because there seems to be no understanding of why each other look at life the way they do, how they got to that point, and how it shapes their political views. And I would argue that's the same thing for the average person as well, how we choose to see things, a worldview based on our experiences and based on which vision that we hold, right? I can speak from experience because when I was a younger man, I would say definitely held an unconstrained vision. I did believe, not so much in this kumbaya, but I did believe we're all humans. We all live on this planet. The resources are for all of us. Let's find a way to share it. But life has taught me that's a great vision, but that's not realistic, right? And I found the older I've gotten, the more conservative I've gotten in my thinking. Like I said, I have always considered myself maybe a progressive liberal or a libertarian. I kind of always sat in the middle, but more towards the left than the right, because I don't even know what left and right means anymore. Those things I believe have been hijacked. So watching that last night, for me, it was plain as day watching these two visions supposedly debate. I didn't see a lot of debating. I didn't see a lot of positioning of good ideas that were based on facts and data. I just saw a lot of pointing fingers, casting blame. I didn't hear a lot of vision for the country, for the world, and how we're going to move out of this discomfort that we're in. Whether you agree with it or not, the world is in a place of discomfort because we're transforming. I don't believe we're going to hell in a handbasket, but we're definitely transforming. And discomfort always is that. It's discomfort, but that's where true change comes from the discomfort. It's like a snake shedding its skin. When a snake is shedding its skin, that is not a pleasant process for the snake. It's a very painful one. And it takes time for the skin to be peeled off. This is why they're constantly rubbing up against things. And this is kind of what I feel like we're doing, except we're rubbing up against each other and wanting to cast blame and point fingers. I myself don't really want to do that. Every month, I try to have at least 3 video chats with people that I don't know, just to get to know people, understand how they think. Every month, at least that's what I try to do. Doesn't always happen, but I've been very fortunate to be able to connect with people from around the world. And that's one of the beauties of poetry, is open up the world, particularly through technology. One of the things us poets love to say and talk about is that we as poets feel that we have a part to play, or we play an important part to the narrative. Last week, we started a panel discussion around this very topic, and we're going to continue it again this coming weekend. What is the role of a poet in present day society? And one of the things that's been batting around in my head, because of technology, because of this apparatus that we're using today, Zoom, being able to connect and bring people together, maybe poets now are part of media, because we have the ability now through technology to create these platforms, to attract many people to listen to what we have to say, whether it's just poetry or about life. So if that's the case, and we have this platform and we do play an important part into shaping present day narratives, then what is the role and responsibility of a poet? Do we put them through the same scrutiny that we put through our media, right? The fourth estate, as they affectionately used to call it in Europe, the media, their job is simple. Their job is to hold governments to task so that they can then educate the citizenship so they can make an informed decision. I don't know about you, but I myself personally think that ship has sailed a while ago. I only see media today that is sprouting a narrative. And I don't care who you follow, because I watch news, whether it's Fox, whether it's MSNBC, ABC, NBC. I watch news not to formulate my beliefs, but to see what they're telling, what they're saying. And I do the same thing with news around the world. I listen to news out of Germany, out of France, out of England, out of Turkey, out of Indonesia. I want to see what's being said. And there seems to be a commonality in broadcasting around the world today, where a lot of news it's become very biased. And if you have a biased news organization, then what are you feeding the people? So I let me rephrase that. I created this show so we, whether it's poets or non-poets, can come on and sit down and talk and speak freely and share why you think the way you do, how you feel the way you do. Let's battle it out with each other. When I say battle it, I don't mean in a negative way, but through our words, through our compassion, to be able to listen empathetically and say, okay, I'm not necessarily agreeing with you, but I never thought of it that way. It's something for me to consider. Why? We have some serious things going on our planet right now. We have some serious things going on in our two countries, Canada and the United States. I've been fortunate enough to live in both these countries. I consider both of them two of the greatest countries on this planet. And I know the warts and all of both their histories. And I still prefer to live here. I'm a boy that was born in a small little island called Trinidad and Tobago, that my mother left to go to the United States to obtain a green card so our family can move for a better life. So I too come from someplace else and had the opportunity to live in the United States and now to live in Canada. And I'm watching these countries unravel. And it's the same thing that's going on in England, in France, and in Germany, in Australia. It's globally right now. So that was the intent of Above the Noise. I call it Above the Noise because of that. It feels like there's just nothing but noise right now on the ground level. And people are having a hard time trying to cipher through and see what truly makes sense. This didn't just start it. This has been going on for a period of time now. Right? I believe Western ways of thinking are under attack. But that's my belief. I believe there's a battle, honestly, to make America or these Western countries more socialist. And I am concerned about that because I have seen, based on my understanding of history, how that works out. And it doesn't work out well. Having said that, are we looking now to maybe have conversations around how we are governed? Capitalism, Is that under attack, or are we now saying it is time to create a new system? Because capitalism itself is only 500-600 years old, the way we understand capitalism now. But then again, too, the way we practice capitalism now, I can understand why people want to get rid of it. It has gotten crazy. And I spent years in the business world. Business world taught me well. It taught me how to understand economics and finance and what you're really doing. That's why I always believe every day you get up, whether you have the best of intentions or not, you're chasing money. Because without money, we don't get to live, or at least live the way we want. So maybe we're having these tremendous pains because maybe it's time for us to have other conversations in regards to sitting there going, this isn't good anymore, this is bad. What are we looking to move towards? What are we looking to do? What are the pains? What are we really doing? Because a lot of these systems is what got us to where we are. From what I understand and the research I've done, capitalism is still the only system that has uplifted so many people out of poverty. Doesn't mean it's a perfect system. Poverty is not a nice to have or something that just happened. Poverty is what we've all come from. This privilege and abundance, that's relatively new. We all stem from barbarians and whatever you want to call them. We're still relatively young. But the danger is we have this great intel and we have technology now. And it seems like the more technology and the more convenience we have in life, the less we seem to respect it. Having said that, those are extremely extreme positions, because I still believe, even with all the craziness that's going on right now, there's still a lot of good and beauty that goes on in this world. We don't hear it enough. We don't share it enough. We tend to want to gravitate towards the negative. The other thing that I took from last night, everything now is about race. Everything. Everything has to be slanted through the pigmentation of race. And I said pigmentation. And I find that problematic. Going back to 9/11, previous to that day, it felt like before 9/11 happened, at least for me, it felt like we were on that trajectory where we are judging each other by character, not by pigmentation. It just felt like things were better. Things were getting better. And then 9/11 hit, and all that seemed to went away. Right? Martin Luther King, as much as there's many things that he said, but we can take what he said out of context and it can stand alone. I hope that one day that my 4 girls grow up in a world where they are judged by the content of their character, not by the pigmentation, not their skin. I thought we were doing that. My pushback to people is, when are we going to do that? Oh, wait a minute. We're doing that and we get better at it every day. But over the last 10 years, it seems like we've slipped backwards, because everything now is about race, about this. And it's pandered, it's used to keep people in a certain way of thinking. I identify as a Black man, but not as a black race. There is one race on this planet, consistent of many different flavors of pigmentation. We all have the same needs, the same wants, the same desires. Many of you here are parents as well, just like me. I have 2 boys. The same thing you want for your children, I want for my boys. The same things you want for your family, I want for my family. The difference with us is we just practice things differently, but we do the same thing. We use food as a means, not just to sustain our body, but a means to celebrate and bring people together. We use song, we use dance, poetry, words. We all do the same things. We just practice it differently. Where have we lost that? Or maybe I'm delusional and maybe we never had it. But it's 2024. And as a kid growing up, I was always told the human race was intelligent and civilized. This show is going to call us to live on that, to actually hold on to that? When are we going to really now, today, start acting civilized and intelligent to recognize I am talking to another human being. I do not need to agree with you. I may not even need to like you, but I respect you because you're human like me. We live in two countries where we talk about free speech and free expression. But it seems like today, free speech only means you're allowed to speak freely as long as you're speaking what you've been told to speak. We talk about diversity and inclusion and equity. But diversity seems to mean we can all look different, but as long as you toe the same line. And I speak from experience. I'm not just talking off the top of my head, because like I said before, I try to have at least 3 conversations with people that I don't know every month. And because of the way I think, and because people's perception of a Black man shouldn't think this way, because personally, I've never experienced racism. At least the way I understood the definition of racism. I've experienced discrimination. I've experienced prejudice. But racism? No. Not in this time. But that's just my belief. But when I share my beliefs, it's funny how some people get so offended by it. And instead of wanting to understand, get belligerent, name call, right? I've been called an Uncle Tom, right? I've been called a sellout. Because why? All Black people are supposed to think the same way. When did we become this? When did the noise get so resonant that we cannot embrace somebody else's viewpoint, even if it differs than ours? This is why.
Now you have comments from the audience.
Oh, well, you see, this is why I have Angie, because I just go on these rants. It's not always going to be this way, but today is setting the stage. So fire away, Ange.
Henry is on. He has. Ooh, Henry, will you unmute yourself so you can give your comments? Because that's a lot to read.
Exactly. and this is a lot to hear. And his comments were very interesting, stimulating, and unleashed or a broken dam of intellect.
Broken dam. I like that, Henry.
Yeah. Because I know that there are people that experience things,
mm-hmm.
and there are people that hear of things.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Whether you're talking about race, bettering yourself, and so on. Each of us, we're at different levels of society. There's someone right now who's homeless, struggling.
Yep.
So the pursuit of the American dream, let's say, is a lot different than someone that's in a middle class situation.
Very true.
We have different options. We have different opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And if you throw in physical and mental challenges, it's even worse. You've hit on a lot of things. And I think, and we could discuss all of them, but the bottom line, for me, my concerns is in the immediate sense, it's like I'm a list maker. Let me just say, I'm a list maker. I make a long list every day of what I need to do. I look at that list and say, okay, what 3 things are the priority? And not to say my method is something that others should adopt, but whether it in reference to the debate and even the history of mudslinging amongst politicians, we as human beings, we can talk about all that other stuff, but we as human beings, I think internationally, we have to decide what are our priorities, what are our priorities regarding our immediate challenges. And I'm speaking of the environment. We see the ramifications of what's going on.
Right.
Some that we've caused, some that we haven't, but the bottom line is we're not going to be here to discuss any of this if we don't start doing something. And I've been in all type of, I call it intellectual masturbation sessions, because no one wants to set the main priority and come up with something specific. So when the meeting is over, we have something concrete that we can take home and we can do and that we can share with others. I really, and you know, I respect you and love you, brother. Dynamic poet. And you brought so much to the table. If everything you said was a dish and you invited me over to your house, I was, oh, wow, look at this. He's got brisket. Oh my God. He's got ribs. Oh my God. He's got barbecue chicken. And you're bringing out, you're going in the kitchen, bringing more and more and more out. And I'm like when is this guy going to stop bringing all this food out? There's so much to feed us.
So much.
You know, a basic entree would be enough. And that's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
And for me, what feeds me is our environment. Because, you know, I've been there, worked with it, Greenpeace and so on. You know, I'm an activist.
Yep.
We can debate race, the origins and all that. You and I have talked about that. And I even commented on it because, you know, there's certain trigger things. I've been attacked. I've been shot at. I've been fighting. I've been in the trenches of helping people impoverished, sickened, the AIDS movement. Okay, statistically, most of them were Black. Okay, we can look at medical disparity and so on and so on and so on. But again, none of that to me is important unless we get a hold or we can come together and say, hey, what can we do about this environmental thing? And that really bothers me so much. Even as I write poetry and I'm looking at writing these subjects and I hear your wonderful lectures and others, and I'm like, no one's talking about our planet. That's what bothers me. And I want to get that feedback from you. What is your view about these climate changes? And right now, we see that New Orleans is going to get hit with 100 miles per hour wind. When they become 200 miles per hour winds, it's going to be more damage. And no, we can't control nature, but there are some things that we can do. Right. But as individuals, what is your view regarding our responsibility as citizens of the planet? I like that term versus human being. Of course, we're human beings, you know, but as citizens of this earth, what can we do? What is your view?
Well, I love the word you use, responsibility, because I think too many people act like there's another planet Earth that if we screw this one up, we can just jump off and get onto that one, number one. I think there is the politics of climate change and then the reality of climate change. Because when I was a kid growing up in New York, in Brooklyn, we were bombarded with acid rain in the sense of the fear of acid rain. These are the things we were told that was going to happen, and acid rain was going to be a big one. And that didn't really materialize. And the reason why I say that is because there's the politics of climate change. You have scientists that don't believe that we're in the dire straits that we are, and then you have others that do believe. I myself personally don't know if we're that kind of dire straits because, again, when I do some research and I look back, the planet has always changed. Is climate change real? Definitely. Climate change is real. The mere fact that we go from winter to spring to summer to fall, climate changes. Is global warming real? Definitely. The planet heats up, she cools down. We were in an ice age. We will go into another ice age again whenever that happens. But the planet does, the thermostat on the planet goes up and down. Have we affected the planet? I think you'd have to be ignorant to not think we have affected the planet to the point where we're going to die in 12 years. No, I don't believe that. I think this planet is too resilient. And if we don't smarten up, she'll get rid of us. But I love the word when you talk about responsibility. This is home. This planet is home to all of us. We all breathe the same air, drink the same water, walk the same earth. And if we're not smart and taking care of our home, we will lose our home. So I think it's upon us as civilized citizens to be able to sit down and go, how are we using the resources on this planet? And how are we obtaining those resources? Because the resources are there to be used, but how we've been going about it may not be conducive to our own health on the planet, but to our own physical health. So I agree when you say we have to be responsible, right? But it's not just a singular thing, or we fix the climate, because this earth that we live on, all the systems, everything is connected. So if we're going to do that, then what's driving us being so frivolous with the environment? Well, capitalism. So maybe we need to look at how we conduct ourselves from a business standpoint. This free market, is it really free? Or do we need a certain amount of restrictions? Do we need a certain amount of regulations? The unconstricted vision believes you should have no regulations and it's completely free. But we also know when you do that, you have people who have bad intentions that will take advantage of that. I mean, look at the discussions that's going around AI right now. We are fearful of AI, and yet that's a technology we created. But we're fearful of it because we know, we're already seeing it. When some people get their hands on it, they use it in not very pleasant ways. So to me, it's the same thing. I want us to be able to really remove the fear, remove the fear mongering, remove the bad science. I personally think science needs to get back to a place of integrity. When we talk about science, a lot of it is about asking questions and challenging theories. And if you come up with something, say, okay, I've come up with this theory, I've tested it, it's been tested. Now you go test it and see if you come up with the same result. We need to get back to basic, traditional, fundamental, good governance of how we live, so we can actually address these subjects in a different way. Because you're right, at the end of the day, if we got news tomorrow that a meteor is coming to hit this planet, how much would race relations matter? How much would gender and sexuality matter? How much would food security and all those things matter if we know that our existence is in jeopardy? So my thing, to your point, Henry, I don't need for a meteor to come and hit this planet. We're already in that stage and we're just not seeing it. So the danger for me when it comes to the climate isn't so much a climate, it's us, because we're the ones having an effect on the climate, not just the physical climate, but the climate that we conduct ourselves in and how we live. And that climate has become very tumultuous. We want the freedoms. Sorry.
I think you just have to take a step back on this whole conversation.
I'm sorry, who's
This is Byron.
Oh. How are you?
How you doing? I think climate change is, I think we all got to acknowledge it's real. The climate change is, like you said, it's going to warm up. If you believe dinosaurs roamed the earth, there's only one way that could have happened. It was a lot warmer. So we got to acknowledge that it's going to warm up. It's going to cool down, just like you said. You can't go from an estimated 700 million people in 1500 to 7 billion people in 2000.
Yeah.
That's a 10 times increase in the human population just in 500 years.
Yeah.
It's going to warm up. Now, we talk about resources. That's kind of an economic issue. Right? And so as we consume resources, why are we consuming resources? Right? I drive up and down the freeway and I see freaking storage unit after storage unit after storage unit. People hoarding stuff, man. And then we got the talking heads telling us how it's all going to come to an end. It's not going to come to an end, right? People are going to survive. We're going to find a way to survive. It's the nature of what we do. We've been around for millions of years. So I think climate change is real. I think we need to stop listening to opinions on CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and stuff like that, because that's what they are. Their opinions. They're not news. So, just everybody just take a step back on that, calm down, do your research.
Yeah.
And just look at things realistically. I kind of live in that constrained world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I believe there's a certain level of constraint that we have to place on certain things. So we can't just open it up. But I do believe that we can do a better job of putting a message forward that says we can control some of this.
Yeah.
Humans are the only creatures on this earth that can control their environment. We can air condition buildings. We can heat buildings. We can build buildings.
Build them, yep.
A bird can build a nest, but it can't heat it.
Yeah.
And it can't cool it. So we control our future. And I think if we take that opinion and work together, everything will come out okay. But it's not going to be solved in this generation.
No, more than likely it won't. And I agree with you. We're not going anywhere. We've been on this planet a long time. I think we'll be here until our sun decides to become a red dwarf and then eventually implode. Then by then we'll be elsewhere or morphed into something else. But you're right. And this is one of the reasons for this. To me, one of the greatest documents ever written was the American Constitution, which took a lot of its meaning from the Magna Carta. But to me, the most important part of the American Constitution is the very first three: we, the people.
Yeah.
And sorry, is it Byron? Is that how you say your name, sir? Byron? I don't want to mispronounce it, so if I am, tell me.
No, it's a Byron.
Okay. We, the people. I think it's upon us now to empower ourselves to get our personal house in order. Whatever you haven't dealt with from your past, it's time for us to deal with it. It is time for us to deal with it. It is time for us to get to understand who we are beyond these meat suits that we walk around in. I'm not talking religion, but for us individually to get our house in order. Because I find when your house isn't in order, you are subjected to a lot of the narrative, a lot of the noise that's going on, number one. Number two, we treat this planet the way we treat each other. If we actually were to be kinder, gentler, nicer, more compassionate to each other, it would be reflected in how we treat the planet. So when we worry about the planet, going back to answering Henry's question, it's not that I disagree with you, but the way we treat the planet is a reflection of how we treat each other. And to me, that's the greatest problem. Once again, not wanting to see that we have more in common than differences. We've been so conditioned throughout all our lives to hear about we're so different, we're so different. We're not. We actually have way more in common than differences. Now, having said that, Henry and I speak, I respect his experience, right? The only reason I brought up the racing is because I saw the way it was played last night. But you're right, Henry, there's lots that I've said because I have a growing list of topics I'd love to see us, as this show hopefully gains momentum, that we will talk about. And right now I feel like we're the frog. Are you guys familiar with the frog in the boiling water, frog in the pot analogy, right? You can take a frog and throw it into a boiling pot of water and scurry back out. You take that same frog, put it in room temperature water, put it on the stove and turn it up slowly. It will slowly come to boil and the frog will stay there and cook itself. And it feels like we're there. I feel like we know the water is boiling and yet we're doing nothing about it.
Can I interject something here?
Yeah, go ahead, Henry. Sure.
When in the United States we had the bus boycotts, that lasted an entire year. That was the longest boycott in the history of America.
Are you talking about it in the 50s? The one that
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was the most effective because you spoke of capitalism. it seems like the main way to get people's attention is to, as he says, hit their pockets, get them in the pockets. And I remember when doing the South African apartheid, I was a student at Fisk University, and we were writing pamphlets and all this, trying to get people aware of what's going on. Because there are people that always don't know what's going on outside their own backyard or neighborhood. And we circulated a list of American companies that had contracts with the government of South Africa. And General Electric was one of them, and some numerous others. And what we were putting out to students to say, look, if your parents have stock in these companies, ask them to get rid of it. If your parents work for these companies, ask them to talk to the leaders of the companies. We were showing the pictures, the information, saying, look, we have to send a signal that it's no. Now, what was General Electric doing at the time? There was an electric fence that was built around the communities of African people, and they provided that. They built the fence, they provided the electricity and all. So all these companies that did things to perpetuate the apartheid system, we were saying to the other students to tell your parents if they have stores or locally, stop doing business with them. And it was worked. This is something that was done in other cities, not just on ours. That's where we got the idea. So, and I've done similar things. I do it even locally, in terms of race and all, and sexism. If I go to a store that follows me around thinking I'm a shoplifter, but there I am looking for, I have all these sinus problems and allergies, and I'm reading the bottles, but they think I'm trying to steal. I say, well, I don't like the way you're treating me. I'm bringing my money here. I think I'm just going to lead a boycott. In other words, I'm not going to shop here anymore. It's the assumption. My father, raised up in Detroit, he would say Black economics was tied to supporting each other. And we're talking about Detroit, Michigan. So we had different communities. And he told me while growing up that put your money in a Black company that provides goods and services. If you can't find one, if there's a company that hires Black and brown people, then support that company or those services. But if you have a company that's white owned, they don't want you there, they won't hire anyone that looks like you, don't spend your money there. Now, my father, all my people who came from the South, with that whole migration thing. And I lived in Chicago, numerous cities, and I thought about that. I translated that from sexism and other things because money is what people will listen and respond to. Now, me just personally doing it and say, I let the company know, look, because of the way I'm treated, I talk to the manager, I'm not coming in. And of course, I'm going to tell people. And I've done this for years, and through the internet, I've spread the same thing with the facts, not just my personal experience, because if there's a company and they say, well, we can't find any Black people to hire or women to hire and leadership, that same or something very similar can be applied in terms of the environment. There are companies that pollute our environment. I mean, just pollution alone is one subject. We're not even talking about, the energy and all that. But I'm just saying that we have the means to connect with organizations and get the information, because information is the key, as to who is polluting our water, because we're escalating in terms of just having a problem with basic clean water. And as human beings, we're not going to make it. We're just forget all the other climate changes. If we don't have clean water, we're not going to make it, period.
It's not even just clean water. We're not allowing our aquifers the time.
Yeah, the bedrock and all.
to replenish themselves. So we're consuming at such an alarming rate that
yes,
that we don't. It's these natural systems don't have the time to do what they're supposed to do.
exactly, and heal. Exactly.
Right.
So I'm just saying this to say we can we could compose a list of companies that are detrimental to our survival as human beings, and then come up with a way to not support those companies financially. And of course, to let them know, look, we're not going to support you. We're not going to buy your products, because some companies, they manufacture a long list of products, and we have to be headstrong to that. And some of those products might be well, they make my favorite charcoal briquette.
Yeah.
Well, I have to barbecue it. Nope. I mean, it's called sacrifice.
Well, you can barbecue, just not with those briquettes.
There you go. It's done with food and so on. But and with the internet, imagine having a company and you're polluting, and it's found out that we can find out who's been investigated and all. And then you're the CEO, and you go to your office and find 5,000 emails sent, and then bags of letters saying, look, because of what you do to our environment, we're not going to buy one damn thing from your company until you turn around and clean up your act.
Well, this is why I even said
that's something concrete and specific.
Going back, and well, and like I said, for me, solutions or
yes,
negotiated solution comes from ideas, and ideas come from talking. Because I think I'm not just about wanting to talk. I'm hoping, because of this, it's an invitation for people to really, number one, get their house in order. So then they can start going, okay, what's really important to me, and what do I have to do, and what am I willing to do it? Because it's not just the polluters, right?
Oh yeah.
Because as Viren, no, I agree. But as Viren said, when you talk about resources, now you're talking about economics. But now when you're talking about polluters, now you're talking about governance. Now you're talking about laws, because we already have the laws on the books. The question is, are we going to enforce them? Because now corporations can go and buy carbon credits. What the hell are you buying carbon credits for? Oh, that says to me you want to continue doing things you have been doing it, so you're going to pass it on to someone else. And this is what we've done here in the West. We have built up the West, and the countries that are coming up are going, oh, now you want us to be environmentally friendly after you have built yourself up. So we need to, that's why I said it's all connected. So we have to look at the environment, we have to look at economics, we have to look at governance, we have to look at finance, we have to look at it all. But at the end of the day, you're right, because it's not just the environment. People have a problem with these big billionaires today. Well, how did they become big billionaires if you didn't support them? How did Walmart become Walmart? Exactly. Sam Walton started Walmart out of the back of his Packer car. He didn't see this, but he had a vision of doing something amazing. That's how Walmart started. People forget.
I bet people laughed at him. It's like,
hugely.
In his car. It's like, dude, you need a building. Are you serious? Yeah, they probably laughed at. But look at now. Yeah.
But how did that happen? Because people. So now there are other factors. I mean, our government too. That's why I said we have to look at governance as well, because our governance has a lot to do with why some of these big corporations have gotten to where they are, because they have access to things that average person doesn't. But what the average person, that's why I was saying the most important part of the U.S. Constitution for me is we the people. And we the people, definitely. We have power in regards to our economics. Martin talked about that. Malcolm tried to get Black people to understand that same thing. We have economic power. I really don't care about racial power. You don't see, our Chinese brothers and sisters worrying about political power. They focus on economic power. Same with the Jews. We have economic power. If you were to extract the Black population out of the United States, I believe it's the 10th or 12th largest, just from an economic standpoint, it would be the 10th or 12th largest country in the world, just from an economic standpoint. So we have power from an economic standpoint. So you're very right on that, right? So these are the conversations I want us to have that's hopefully going to either me or one of you or you, someone saying, let's start an initiative and invite poets to do something different, right? Not just talk, because I love to talk. You know I love to talk, but I also love action. I love building things. I love solutions that's going to enrich us all. We're at a very interesting point in our history. We're at the precipice where, to Vivian's point, we're going to keep going on, but how do we keep going on? That's up to us. What political visions are we going to hold? I don't know. I don't know if socialism is completely wrong. I don't know if communism is completely wrong. I hear what people want you to believe, but I also have people who believe in them that talk very favorably. Doesn't matter. What are we going to do? How well informed are you so that you can make a decision that works for you, but also works for the collective? Because I don't live on this planet by myself. We need to have basic fundamental conversation around freedoms. We want the freedom, but we don't want the responsibility that goes with the freedom. And for those with great powers, much is expected. Much is expected of us, and we've been dropping the ball. So I'm not going to sit there and completely blame corporations, because corporations are made up of people. Our government is made up of people. We act like these are separate entities. There are people. But we need to hold them to account. We have to hold ourselves to account so we can hold them to account. When the election is 60 days away in America. Here in Canada, we're probably another year away from our election. It's the same issues we're having. What are we going to do? Are we just going to keep voting the same types of people in? Maybe we need to sit down and now look at power. That's been one of the biggest things on this planet. We do not want to reconcile with power. It's always been about power. Those that have versus those that don't. Whether you have a single dictatorship monarchy or you have the semblance of democracy, whether it's a constitutional republic or whether it's a parliamentary system like here in Canada. What does that mean? Because I do not have absolute freedom. I have what I call responsible freedom because I don't live on this planet by myself. And I think too many people act like they can do whatever they want at the expense of others. And I think this is why I'm saying, I could be wrong. Maybe some of these comments, does someone have their mic? Someone unmute?
Henry, mute your mic.
Yeah. Just unmute.
Mute your mic.
Yeah. I'll do it, Henry. I got you. But my thing is, I don't live on this planet by myself. I am my brothers and sisters' keeper, but I have to make sure I am strong first. This is why I invite people, operate like the human heart. The human heart, when it's pumping fresh blood to the body, oxygenated blood to the body. Most people think the brain is what gets fed first. The human heart actually feeds itself first. It takes what it needs and distributes the rest. We are taught to send it all out and hope some comes back. That's not balanced. And this world that we live in, this universe that we live in, is about balance. It's about maintaining balance. So I agree with you. I think the environment is an important subject, but I also think how we look at race, how we look at our humanity, how we look at politics, how we look at finance, economics, because they're all connected. How we look at education, how we look at healthcare, because if you don't have your health, then all of this doesn't matter. So they're all connected, and we keep looking at them in silos and trying to come up with solutions from a silo standpoint. And I'm saying we need to be a little bit more clever than that. We need to see how things are all connected, how science plays a part, how politics plays a part in all of what we do. Right? Like I said, I have today's show is just setting the tone. Some of the show topics that I have written down is excuse me. I mentioned it before, the election, the elections that are coming, the US and the world. We're starting to see the same things happening in Germany and France. France had a huge election a month and a half ago. Germany just went through this. Italy went through this before England. We are going through ours. The United States is going through this in 60 days. So it's a big thing. You know, I have other topics like one of the major problems is our media today. Our media today it doesn't practice, it's not a non-biased media. And I would argue with anyone that tells me that it is. Because last night, whether you like him or not, I saw 3 people debating one person. That's what I saw. I saw them fact check him numerous times, didn't fact check her. I got up this morning and watching people posting memes, mean-spirited, like, I don't know if that makes them feel good or not. And I'm like, wow, the hatred is so palpable. It's like, what are we doing? So we need to look at media, right? How? Because remember, the job of the media is not just to hold the government to task. It is to educate the citizenship. That was the intent of the media. Back until I think it was maybe the 70s, there were no political ads, or you weren't paying. Each media outlet had to provide time and space in their newspapers for political messaging. Maybe we need to get back to that and take the damn money out of politics, because once money got involved in the way it has, look at what we've gotten, right? There's a multitude of things. I want to understand what left and right work means anymore. Is capitalism on life support? Is DEI dying? And if it is, so why? Right? I want to talk about Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, and do we really understand them? Was MLK a socialist? What is the current state of the media? I mentioned that. Are we in a cloud of ignorance? I have a long list of things that I want us to talk about, but it's not just going to be me, because Henry, you're someone I've invited to be on this show. So when you and I agree to a date, I'm going to want to know, what do you want to talk about? And obviously the climate is one of them, because I want us to come not just to talk about what Rawle wants to talk about. What do we want to talk about? And the climate may lead us into many different things. It's only going to be an hour to an hour and a half, but doesn't mean we're just going to have one conversation. I'm just planting a seed. I'm just creating a space where we can come together and say, let's talk. And if we can really talk, truly listen, not always agree with each other, call each other when we believe you're talking bullshit, to call each other in a respectful way, to use facts and data, to use your experience, to use all of you to make formulated decisions. Because if we can talk that way, maybe we'll learn from each other. And once we do that, maybe we can start thinking of ideas that will eventually lead to solution. Too many people want to jump to solutions without going through the process. And there's a process to this. I could be delusional, because I know there are people out there talking. There are people out there doing good works. But I'm also just looking at life. You cannot live on this planet and truly say you're an intelligent person and not realize that our climate is having issues, and a lot of it is because of us. You cannot live on this planet and go, why is it so many people are doing well, but yet so many other people are still struggling? And maybe it's the fact that we in the West have so much because our economy now is completely about consuming. This is why we have storages, because we're constantly been conditioned since the end of World War II to acquire stuff. Oh. And yet stuff isn't making people happy. And in order to facilitate those stuff, you have to extract resources. And then you have to put more resources to develop those resources, to turn them into stuff, right? Because people need to work, people need to eat. That's why I said things are connected. So I have a long list of things that I want us to talk about. My hope for Above the Noise is that eventually it does morph into more of not so much a think tank, but an action tank, where we can come up with an idea based on conversations. And to your point, Henry, maybe do something grassroots where we encourage poets and other people to say, how serious are you about this topic? Right? Racism. I would love that word to completely vanish from our vocabulary. Not because I'm ashamed of it, because I understand where it came from. If we want to end racism, maybe let's start by not believing in race. Because the way we categorize ourselves now is still a new thing that came out of the Black American slavery experience. That's where it came from. We didn't categorize ourselves this way, using science to justify it. That's why I said everything is corruptible because there's humans involved. And you have to, my thing is, can we get to a point where we accept that we're here to experience the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful? And we have some say in how we manage or how we deal with the bad and the ugly that happens in life. But we're never going to eliminate it. Because the founding fathers didn't use slavery because they hated Black people. Slavery was already being used when America was created. Slavery was already being used on this planet for centuries before America came into existence. It is not a new thing. It is part of our humanity. Why? Because slavery has always been about power. And it's a byproduct to war, and it's an economic solution. That's what slavery has always been about. This is why I find it interesting. People are still losing their mind over what happened 300-400 years ago, and yet slavery is alive and well and probably more powerful and more underground than it's ever been today. The mere fact that we are talking on Zoom and this laptop I have, slave hands played a part in this because the components needed to make these things work had to come out of the ground, and they were dug by mostly slave hands. So what are we talking about when we say we're fighting for justice? Having said that, can't solve all the world problems. We can only deal with what's going on in our lives. This is why I said it's important, I think, for us to each get our house in order. Where are you with yourself? Where are you with your own respect for yourself? Where are you with your own love for yourself? It's hard to do that with others if you don't have it for yourself.
Rawle, let me say.
Go ahead. Sorry, Angie.
Excuse me, Rawle. Henry put in the comments, he says sex slavery still exists.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
And when we when we're talking about the environment, if we don't take care of the animals in the environment, we're not going to have anything to eat, and you'll all be vegetarians like me. And I say that because here in Tennessee, there are they're building so that the animals have nowhere to go. And I say that because there's a menagerie in my yard. I can look out the window and the little fawns are right up under my window, so close that if I let my blinds up, they run. I can see birds, I can see ducks, I can see, you name it, is in my yard. And I really enjoy that. And I really hope that when we talking about the environment, we stop cutting it down, because if they don't have anywhere to go, they're going to be living in your living room in a minute. Because if I remember correctly, somewhere in Antioch, they saw a black bear in the yard. So
yeah, to your point, we're actually living in their environment. We are the ones that keep expanding into. Why is forest fire such a problem here in Canada and other parts of the world? Because we keep building in places maybe we shouldn't be building in. Mm-hmm. Why are the shorelines eroding away? Because that happens. I mean, the continents shift, mm-hmm. right? But maybe we don't need to be building homes on the shoreline, particularly on shorelines that we know will be a problem. Look, at the end of the day, we are the problem, but we are also the solution. But don't say that too loud to the animals, because now all the animals are going to think we're going to eat them. And I wouldn't put it past us, because we as a species As much as we can do amazing things, man, we can do some crazy ass things as well.
Just don't eat the deer because they're cute. They're in my yard.
They're
They're
too late for that. They're already being eaten. My thing is this, again, the way we treat animals and the way we treat this planet is a reflection of how we treat each other. If we start treating each other with the respect that a human being deserves because you're human, that should mean something, that you're human. And I don't think it means that anymore. I don't know if it ever did. And if it didn't, I would like us to bring it to where it means something. It should mean something that you are human. I find it interesting. I live in a world today where we don't know what a woman is. Okay, let's have that conversation without pointing fingers. Because are we looking to move to a human 2.0? But for me, I still need evidence, not just hearsay and feelings. And I think most people are like that. Show me that your theory has been proven and it's right. I'll move off of it easily. But I'm not just going to move off because someone feels a certain way. We need to get back to some common sense. We're not talking enough. We're yelling at each other. I'm not saying at anyone here, but just in general. What do you see? Last night, I saw two people yelling at each other and not really listening. But then again, I wasn't surprised. But I found it problematic. Because now, my fellow American friends, you guys have a big decision to make. Who are you going to choose? We have the same thing coming here in Canada. The ruling party is telling us you have to fear the conservatives because they want to take things away, blah, blah, blah. I'm old school. I believe our government has gotten way too big, and people's solution now is the government. And I think that's part of the problem. That's why I try to encourage my American friends to go back and look at some history and understand why the founding fathers did what they did and why they wrote the Constitution the way they did. We've been bamboozled by many things, and the biggest bamboozle is we have forgotten the importance of educating ourselves. Because when I was in school in Brooklyn, they taught us a lot of things about slavery, things that they're saying they don't teach. So either they were teaching it and then they've decided to take it away, because I remember learning a lot of things. Now, there's a lot of things that weren't taught. But anyway, that's what Above the Noise is. Let's start off by having meaningful, thoughtful, respectful, and at times passionate. Passion has become another word for anger or angry. I'm good with anger. Anger is a healthy emotion. I have no problems with that. But let's be respectful of each other, because you have every right to think the way you think, and you have every right to speak how you speak. If we have free speech, you have the right. Fighting for free speech means, are you going to fight for the person who angers you most with their words, who doesn't see things the way you do, and who says things that just makes your blood boil, but you will fight for them to say it because why? We believe in free speech, not some speech. This is why I said maybe we need to have the conversation about what these freedoms mean today in 2024 and as we move forward. Because I've been in environments when they say it's about free speech, and then as soon as I start speaking and sharing my thoughts, I'm shut down. I find that problematic. I've been in environments where they say this is an inclusive environment, but because someone saw my Zoom handle that says human and male, they decided to get offended by it, and I didn't even get a chance to defend myself. I was kicked out. How is that inclusive? I'm watching racism being practiced openly today, and we're good with it. Because why? Now it's happening to white people? I have a problem with all of these things. I think they're stupid. Shows that we didn't learn. Shows that all the work that Booker T did didn't matter. It's time for us
Rawle,
to
let's
have
move.
different
We
conversations.
running out of time, Rawle.
Yeah, we are. That's why I'm getting ready to wrap this up. So,
And I need to do the IPC news. But before I do that, I want to thank everybody for coming out. I hope you enjoyed yourself. And I really, really hope you guys come back, because this was just our premiere. And we'll have so many other great things to talk about. And when you come back, please interact. Just it's a conversation with everyone, not just us.
hold on, Ange, before we go, I want to ask you, do you have a preference to coming into the Zoom room or watching it live, like on Facebook or YouTube? Because I myself personally like it this way. I loved hearing Henry's viewpoint. I know, Scott, probably in future you'll have things to say. Same with you, Shah. So I personally would prefer to invite people, and you show up and you tell your friends and come armed. The next shows from here on in is going to be a little bit more structured, in the sense of, we do have a format we're going to follow. Today we kind of introduced you to the format, but kind of blew it away because I just wanted to talk. I wanted you to have an understanding why Mrs. Anjie and I with a J, why we think this is important. I may have come up with the idea, but she's jumped into it wholeheartedly because she believes in what we're looking to do. So I will continue to do it the Zoom way. I hope you will come back. So just know that future shows, it'll be a little bit more linear in regards to how it flows. Today was just this meet and greet kind of thing. So sorry, Anjie, go ahead.
You're good. This is just what we have going on here. On Sunday, September the 15th, we have the Inspired Poetry Corner recital. That's where we'll have a guest poet. We'll interview their poet. They'll say some of their poetry, and then we'll have a few other poets, support them, ring in and say a few little poems. That's at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. Wednesday, September 11th, is when no, that's the date. Anyway, Wednesday, September the 18th is Home is the Heart. That's an open mic. I am the host for that one. And it's at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Wednesday, September the 25th is when we'll have our next Above the Noise. And our guest for that one is Richard Spacek. It'll be at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. And we'll be sending out invitations and letting everybody know. Yeah. And if Rawle, do you have anything else? If not, I'll close this out.
Well, and like I know Henry and even Scott, Cheryl, like a number of you will be getting a text from me or email, whatever, in regards to setting up a time if you want to be a guest, because I'd love for you guys to be a guest. Byron, you're new to me, but I hope you'll come back, and I hope you may consider, because just from what you're saying, you sound quite intelligent, and you might have some insight that I would love to, pick your brain. So just stay tuned, because we're already at the midpoint of September. So I'm going to be sending out my featured list for hopefully for 2025. I already got Henry on it because your book has come out in March. So I think March is when we had you scheduled, but we'll sort that out. Also, one of the things in the news this Saturday, I'm part of a panel discussion with Annette Harpley's group, POP, where we're going to continue the conversation around what role is a poet, what is the role of a poet in these types of times, right? Not just what is a poet, but in social unrest, social discomfort, what is the role of a poet? What do we see? So that's a continued conversation. There's more things that we're going to be doing. So just stay tuned. Please, please support the group itself. I know a number of you do, but I hope you enjoyed this today. I myself personally had no idea how this was going to go. I just knew I was going to turn the mic on. and let it flow. I tend to be a speaker that speaks from the heart because I want to understand. I want to see your heart. I want to feel your heart. I want to understand how you think. So I'm glad that I'm actually was impressed with how many people showed up tonight. So I thank you for that. Thank you for being here. Henry, thank you for your contribution. Byron, thank you for again, I feel like I'm saying your name wrong, but so far you haven't
No,
corrected.
you're saying it right.
Am I?
Byron used to be my AVP when I worked at
Oh, you,
Tennessee State.
okay. I thought you just showed
And
up.
I don't care what I do, when I send it to Byron, Byron always show up and support me.
Okay.
Thanks, Byron.
Yeah, nice, nice, nice.
Anytime,
But,
Angie.
yeah.
So now it's not Mr. Lynch anymore, it's Byron.
Isn't it funny though when you work with someone like I remember I had a rugby coach in high school, and then when I started playing rugby for a club, he was part of the club, and every time I saw him, I go, "Hey, Mr. Felinsky," and he goes, "My name is Randy." I go, I tried calling him Randy once, it didn't feel right. So every time we're on the field running or doing whatever, I go, "Hey, Mr. Felinsky." My opponents go, "Why are you calling him Mr.?" It's a long story. Anyway. But thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up and supporting this. Continue, spread the word, please. I'm going to post this video up. I'm actually going to get it ready tomorrow so we can post it for the weekend if people want to watch it again, or if they just want to direct people in your circle. Like Angie said, I don't know what we're doing, but I think we're onto something that has a lot of potential. And it's just
Byron, I'll send you an invite to our group so you can be a part
join
of
the
it.
group. But it's just like the recital. I had no idea when I started the recital where it was going to go, how it's going to go, and here we're getting close to wrapping up year 3 to start year 4 in January. So if you believe in what you heard tonight in regards to this vehicle, please support it. Please tell your friends, and come back with questions. Like I said, I'm going to reach out to a number of you to be a guest. If you know people that you would want to see on this show as a guest, please let them know and pass them on to me, because I'm just looking to talk to a multitude of people and to tentacle and just reach out to as many people as possible. Because as much as I love poetry, it's not just about poetry. Mm-hmm. It's about life. And as long as I still have life and breath, I'm going to do my part to uplift our human consciousness. Because for me, being human means something. I love being human. I love being a man. And I love my pigmentation. And I invite you all to feel the same way. Hold no shame for who you are. I didn't choose this, but I'm glad I'm it. I love you all. Truly do. Some of you I like. The ones I don't like, we need to sit down and have a coffee. Want to say goodbye, Angie? You want to take us home, Angie? You got the final word. I'll shut up.
I just wanted to like I said, thank you for coming out. And I want you to always remember this. Until the lion tells his story, the hunter is the hero. So us on this panel, we're the one that's got to get that lion, make him the hero, because he can't tell the story. We're going to have to do it.
This is why we call her. This is why we call her Mrs. Anjie. Thank you, guys.
Peace. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us some of your time. Really appreciate it. We'll talk soon, guys. Love you all. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
Night.
Bye.
Oh, Angie, you still there?